The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. I'm your host, Marcus Melnick of Firearm Mentor, and today we have Eric G. with us, and he owns GreatJunkRemoval.com. Eric and I were police explorers way back in the day, in the early 90s. And again, this series of interviews is about how the explorers of yesterday created the leaders of today. Eric, thank you for joining us.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Can you tell everyone, what is your origin story? You were a police explorer. Did you want to go into public safety or law enforcement? And how did you start this company? What's the backstory?
This is a long story, so I'll try and shorten it up. I moved to Skokie. The kids across the street from me wound up being highly into scanning. And with the scanner radios, we'd listen to different police calls. And a lot of times on the police radio, you would hear them say, "Squad, whatever, please assist the fire department at XYZ address." So we kind of made a game out of beating the fire department to different scenes. And then as we got older, I want to say like freshman year, they're like, "Hey, we're going to the police station every Wednesday night for this program." And so I wound up going with them, and then it wound up being the Police Explorers. We did a lot of learning about police tactics, protocols. They taught us the radio codes, the different 10 codes, the radio alphabet, and then we learned about traffic control. And the only time I was ever fingerprinted was in Police Explorers when they taught us how to fingerprint people. And we'd help with the missing exploited children. There used to be packets they'd make with the fingerprints of the children, their picture, so parents could have it. If they ever did go missing, they'd have fingerprints. And then we also learned, we did some security with Skokie had some type of flea market or something. We did security for that, for a Special Olympics fundraiser. After going through Police Explorers, I knew I wanted a career in public safety and more fireside. So I went to Oakton. I worked on an ambulance. I volunteered with different fire departments. On October 13th, 2003, I actually tore all the muscles in my right shoulder, and that ended my fire and EMS career. From then on, I started working for a construction company where I was a project manager. And with doing the project management stuff, one of the key things was waste removal. And we needed an efficient way to remove waste from our job sites. I coordinated this for many years, and then it was a small business, and suddenly the owner dropped dead and everybody was left jobless. I figured that this type of service, removing the construction debris and unwanted items from homes and job sites and whatnot, would be a good field to get into. So I started the business.
Fantastic. When we talk about waste, we're not talking about human waste. We're talking about a little extra wood here and there. Am I correct in saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so
I always say we get rid of everything with the exception of corpses, ex-husbands, etc.
So many jokes, so little time. That's awesome. So you have already answered my next question, which is, can you tell us in your own words what the Explorer program is? I want to go back to your experience working in EMS. Were you an EMT? Were you a paramedic?
Sure. So I actually was both.
So you were a POC. That means paid on call firefighter. And when I worked for Glencoe, what we used to do is if there was a major event, we would recall the paid on call firefighters. And one of the big things, one of the first times I saw that was on September 11th, 2001. All of the schools in the community, the synagogues, they were all really upset, as was the entire nation. And what we ended up doing, because we were public safety, we deployed the on-duty firefighters who were also police officers to the schools, to the synagogues, and we recalled the paid-on-call firefighters to respond to emergency calls from the station. How far away did you have to live? How many miles away did you have to live from the fire department?
So this situation was different in the fact that it was an underserved community that didn't have a lot of money. And so it was less expensive for them to call it paid on call and have us actually man the firehouse. So there was no restriction or no residency requirements and no distance. Sure, sometimes you would get called back in if there was a major incident, but all the POCs would have shifts and there were 24-hour shifts.
Okay, so I call that paid on premise,
Okay.
but it's semantics. Northfield operates that way as well. What did exploring teach you about life?
I feel like I always had a call to help people before I even found exploring. And I think that exploring helped fine tune those skills and learn additional skills.
Okay, so it enhanced
Yeah,
your
but
desire to help others.
because like this is 35 years ago or like
Right.
forever ago. And you and Mitch were like, you're only like a year or two older than me. But
We still are.
yeah, for sure. But at the time, it seemed like you guys were like way older and like you guys were like men of the world, and exploring helped enhance the feeling to serve or whatever community service aspects. But I think that the quality of the people that you were with helped inspire greatness. Like at the time, Mitch was like an entrepreneur of his own right. And I always, even then, respected like, wow, this guy is just like a year older than me and he already has a business. And now I think he's one of the largest entertainment providers in Illinois, which I'm just always amazed about how such a simple idea could explode into what he's created. So I think it just was the quality of people that turned out for this type of thing.
Fantastic. For the listeners, I did interview Mitchell, and he owns Celebration Authority Clowning Around. That episode aired on Memorial Day. You can catch it on my YouTube channel. I'm going to ask you about your business. Are you mostly B2C or B2B, or a mix?
Sure. So we're a mix. I like to say from one piece of furniture to cleaning out your entire home or business, we can help. We have solutions for all sizes.
Have you, in your junk removal business, had to interact with law enforcement, firefighters, social services for things like hoarding?
Our only real interactions with law enforcement are if we're in a situation where we're cleaning out a building and there's a squatter or tenants haven't left and it's a foreclosure or eviction. Generally, we have not done any of the major televised hoarding situations that you see on TV. This is our 13th year in business. So over the years, we've helped many families with different situations. A lot of people call and say, I have a hoarder. And really, it's not. It's not the hoarding that you see on TV. Somebody has a lot of boxes and they don't want to throw away their boxes. Or somebody has just too much stuff and it's perceived as hoarding. Whereas the real hoarding jobs that we have done, you can't even walk through the house, or there's such a narrow pathway, it's almost not safe. In one case, it was a 3-bedroom house, and it took a week in order to safely make your way through the house and just have a pathway to go in and out, just the way the items were almost like a Tetris environment, how the items were wedged in there. That was one of the most severe ones that we had. That job took about 2 weeks, and it was a 6-man crew. And I do not remember at this time how many truckloads it was, but it was a lot.
Which leads me to the next question. What do you do with it all?
It really depends on the condition. We always try and practice landfill diversion. If something can be reused, recycled, or donated, that's our first thing that we try and do. Otherwise, we have recycling centers that handle the rest, and whatever that can't be recycled will ultimately make it to a landfill, which is not our goal at all.
That's great. Being eco-friendly is important in today's world. Have you ever found any goodies? Like good stuff?
We always return those types of items to the client. One time, we actually found in an attic in Glencoe, there was a really heavy box. And when it was opened, it wound up being actual gold bars that the family's grandfather had put up there. At the time, I think gold was like $1,100 an ounce. So it was a substantial recovery that we made for them. Most other companies probably would have not said anything, which is sad.
Eric, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you or utilize your services, what website can they go to? How can they reach out to you?
GreatJunkRemoval.com. That's GreatJunkRemoval.com. Or they can call 888-709-JUNK, 888-709-JUNK. We're 100% locally owned and operated. We're not a franchise. And we'd love to take care of you and your family. because most of our customers come from referrals. And that means a lot to us, that people have trusted us enough that they give our name out to their trusted family members. So it's our pleasure to serve families and help families, and we're here for you when you need us.
Eric, it's actually an honor to do this interview with just another person who is out there to help other people. It is fantastic. Eric, when people are going to get a hold of you, what is the area of coverage geographically that you service?
Essentially 10 miles around Des Plaines,
okay.
Illinois.
So 10-mile radius from Des Plaines.
A little bit further in some cases, but generally, like, we try to be eco-friendly, and sometimes going far distances, it just doesn't make any sense for our operation. I have everything set up to do the best donation and recycling and reuse within that parameter. But if you're in 15 miles from Des Plaines, it's not the end of the world. We can definitely help you. But 30, 40 miles, I would recommend you to somebody else.
What final thoughts can you offer to the listeners about A, getting involved in an Explorer program, and B, going into business?
The Explorer program, I think the best way to for me, it happened by accident, as I mentioned before. Like, somebody invited me and boom, I was there every Wednesday. Or was it, do you remember, was it every 2 weeks? Or was
I think it was every other week.
Okay, okay. But for me, it's like, it was either watch dinosaurs, not the mama, or go to the Explorer meeting. Because that was Wednesday nights on ABC.
I tease my sister about that show all the time.
Not the mama.
Oh, that's funny.
As far as starting your own business, everybody will give you a different answer. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. For me, I saved my money and I bought a truck and had enough money for insurance. A lot of companies start out doing things through shortcuts. The one thing is, I always wanted to do it the right way, even if it costs more money. Our company is overinsured as far as workers' compensation, general liability policy, an umbrella policy, a commercial auto policy. When I first got started, it cost more money, but I had a really good general liability policy and I had a good commercial auto policy. In the beginning, it was just me and I didn't have the workers' comp. As soon as I started bringing people on, it cost more, but we had the workers' comp. And that actually set us up for success because there were certain clients that we could not service if we didn't have the proper insurance, such as workers' comp. Don't be afraid to take risks. You only have one life and you have to do what makes you happy and what fulfills you. And if starting that business is what fulfills you, then go for it. You're kind of only cheating on yourself if you don't take that risk and take that step.
Very good. Again, thank you for taking the time to come out and be interviewed for the radio program. If our listeners would like to use his services, his website is greatjunkremoval.com. That's how you can get a hold of him. There's a contact me page on it, and you can explain your issue or your problem and go to Eric G. for the solution.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
As we continue our conversation about the Explorer program in Skokie of the 1990s, I called Rajiv Tangri, who is a physician. You can't get much higher education-wise than a physician, who very, very intelligently moved out of Illinois to Arizona, the real land of the free. And when we were kids, his mom was one of the hardest working moms I've ever met. She worked at the post office, and his parents busted his butt so that he could get a great education and be successful, and he is. So, Rajiv, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me and tell our listeners about your background.
Oh, of course, Marcus. Thank you for having me. My background, I born in actually India, and I moved to Chicago when I was 3.5. We lived in the inner city of Chicago, and as I approached first grade, my parents were looking around for a great school system, and it happened to be Skokie. So I moved to Skokie, and that's where I started going to school and going to high school, and that's where I learned about the Explorer program, and kind of was excited because high school, you have a lot of issues trying to fit in with different crowds, different people, different groups. So if you're not an athlete, you're going to try to fit in with this group. You might be a nerd. I think that having the Explorer program was a great kind of an outlet at that point in my stage in my life to kind of meet people that were on a positive track, because I met a lot of misfits too. My parents wanted to make sure I didn't become a misfit like a lot of my friends did.
Very good. Did you ever want to become a police officer?
When we were growing up, the show Chicks was always on.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, people were always like, yeah, you look like Pon. So that was part of it. And then also, I did think I wanted to become a police officer because of the show. I wanted to, learn how they drove and the law. So those kind of things kind of added up to where, I wanted to maybe pursue a career in law enforcement.
Awesome. So what made you switch to medical school?
Actually, it had nothing to do with the Explorer program. I was spending a summer lifeguarding, and during that summer, I got rear-ended pretty bad. Actually, on the way to a dealership in Skokie, I got rear-ended real bad, and I was in a lot of pain. I didn't know why there was so much pain. I wanted to learn what caused pain. So I think that summer, I ended up taking an anatomy physiology class and a microbiology class, and I aced the classes. But I took the microbiology class because Ebola was big at that time. But the anatomy class, the teacher was a physician in town. And when he pulled out the body, everybody in the anatomy class was shying away from it. I stood up right up to the body, went up to it, started examining the tendons and trying to figure out how things were connected. And he's like, whoa, you're going to be gifted at this. So, I really aced the classes, and they both encouraged me to go into medical school at that point.
Terrific. I did look you up online. And I want to share with my listeners 2 reviews, all 5-star, just to tell everyone what kind of physician you are. I saw Dr. Tangri for a radioactive iodine treatment to treat my Graves' disease. He really took his time explaining the process with me more than any other doctor has. I felt very comfortable and would not hesitate to recommend. That's a fantastic review. The other one says he found a lump in my right breast in a CAT scan that was being done for a lung nodule. The tumor was very small at the time, and he literally saved my life as the lung nodule turned out to be nothing. Cannot thank him enough. Now, I'm just going to get on my soapbox here. Everything was great except everyone said long wait times. But when you have a caregiver who takes his time or her time with you, there's going to be long wait times. My physician is the same way. He takes his time. It's never rushed. And I know I have to wait to have good service. So good on you, Rajiv. If anyone didn't figure it out, he's a radiologist. Why did you pick radiology?
As I got into medicine, first of all, I really like computers. And I think back in our age, back in the day, computers were starting to come out. So I think back then I had a computer that went from like 4 megahertz to 4.77 megahertz with a turbo. But radiology was something I was really interested with computers and things like that. But more so, surgeons can see inside a body, but they have to dissect it. They have to cut into it, and they may be wrong, and they don't necessarily know what's wrong with the patient. But the advances that were coming up with CT, MRI, and what my specialty was nuclear imaging, so PET CT scans. So we look for cancers, and we can find cancers simply by injecting radioactive sugar into a person. Kind of scary, but that's what we use to find cancers in a person.
6 years ago, I had thyroid cancer. And if you were local to Chicago, I definitely would have hit you up and seen you. I'm fine. It was I had a thyroidectomy. I had 1 radiation treatment where I'm not exactly sure what it's called. They give you a pill, you swallow it, rid your body of iodine, and it kills whatever cells remain. When I read the review about Graves' disease, I'm like, oh, I totally understand, because Graves' disease is a disease of the thyroid. And also, I see that you are a DO. Can you explain, because most people don't know the difference can you explain the difference between a DO and an MD?
Okay, and that's a very good question, because a lot of people ask me, they see DO, but they don't think that I'm a regular doctor. In this country, way back in the day, there was actually a different school of thought. One school of thought tried to push medicines on people, which I would say is allopathic medicine. And one school of thought would push different type of manipulations on people called osteopathic manipulation. Osteopaths tended to also learn a lot of chiropractic medicine. So nowadays, what the current system is that now the school systems are kind of fusing. That's going to change in sometime in the future. Before, when I was in school, I had to learn everything that an MD would, which is taking all the standard classes. And then we'd also take chiropractic classes. And we'd also get additional classes on naturopathic medicine, nutritional medicine. So things that would never get talked about in any other school, we do get taught about. And that's what I liked about it. It's a more holistic approach to a person. That's why I chose it. And holistic medicine is a good way to approach a person. And that's why I like it.
I used to be very skeptical. I've had chronic back pain when I worked in the entertainment business. And I saw a chiropractor. It took him 6 months to not cure me. And I saw a naturopath who cured me in 2 hours. I am a huge proponent of traditional and non-traditional medicine. I think they all have a place and they all complement each other. And that's just my own opinion. So back to the Exploring program. In your own words, can you explain what the Explore program is and what it meant? Well, we talked about what it meant to you, that it was an outlet to fit in with non-misfits like me. Ha, 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 ha. Sorry, that was a joke. I have a sense of humor. So what did you do as an explorer? What do you remember? I mean, it was a long time ago, I get it. But what were some of the activities that you were involved in?
I remember going to lock-ins, DARE program, ride-alongs with police officers. And that's, obviously you can be explorer in different fields. And so that's what I never really knew. Actually, when I got into the explorers, I just thought they were just police explorers. But then when I got to the Explorer program, they're all sorts of explorers. Cub Scouts are explorers, I didn't even know that.
So what did you learn about life when you were an explorer?
When I went in the ride-along programs, many of the volunteer programs like the DARE program for drugs and things like that, what I liked about them is that we really learned from a different perspective of what this can do to a community, like for example, drugs and things like that. But the ride-alongs were upfront in your face of what can happen to you if you do something stupid. So I think that having that exposure really scared me at first to say, oh wow, this really kind of happened. And it kind of guided me to a path where I'm kind of avoiding those kind of bad situations, people, things like that. And the other things were, even spending time with the officers, they're now in an environment around healthy people, right? They're healthier. They're mentally and all that stuff, they're generally healthier. So you're feeling like you're spending time in a quality environment too, which is very important.
What I hear you saying, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I hear you saying that it kind of opened your eyes to the real world. Would you agree, disagree?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, parents like to shelter their children from bad things. My parents did. Your parents did. I do my children as appropriate as they age and get older and older. They get to understand more and more. So I totally get that. Do you have any lighthearted stories that you can share with our listeners about the Explorer program?
I remember having a lot of fun at lock-ins and stuff. Like you said, we were sheltered. My parents never really had me going away, traveling away, things like that. So lock-ins were such a great experience to get out of the house and experience what it's like to, hang around a bunch of other kids. And as far as funny stories, it was so long ago, I'm sure there were funny stories, but I can't really recall specific funny stories. During ride-alongs, you see, experience so much stupidity too. I don't want to say there was stupidity, but nonsense is probably a better phrase for it. But
there's a little bit of a dark sense of humor in law enforcement that I think trickles down to explorers. Sometimes you see some bad stuff, and the outlet is to laugh privately, not in the victim's face or anything like that. I can't think of any story. I know I've been involved in them in my career in public safety, but I don't want to. I'll share one. This was related to me. There was a deceased body in an intensive care unit, and rigor mortis had set in. And so one of the police officers had to go fingerprint, because the person was a John Doe. They didn't know who he was, and he passed away, and that's very unfortunate. So they had to go fingerprint him, and his fingers were very stiff because that's what happens to a body a certain time after death occurs. And so here he's talking to the deceased body saying, please cooperate, please roll your finger. And the nurses are walking by. This is actually in an intensive care unit, looking in saying, who is he talking to? And he was using that as humor to deal with the dead body. So there's a lot of humor that goes on, but it's very, very dark. Let's shift gears to the light side of the force. So you went into a career and basically you are serving others. Police officers, firefighters, they save lives. They save lives in an immediate situation where there's danger that's going to happen right now. You save lives a little bit differently. You save lives by looking into a person's body and making a diagnosis, or at least furthering a diagnosis. So did the Explorer program influence you in serving others?
For being part of the Explorer program, you're learning community. When you're on ride-alongs, you're with officers, you're with people that are in your community. They talk to you about, hey, I went to this school, I used to play in this park. They grew up in the areas often. It is a community, and that's what kind of you do learn in it. And not necessarily why I went to become a doctor per se. I mean, that was because of pain per se.
Right.
The bonus of it is learning to be able to serve other people with it.
This is kind of off script. You went to University of Kansas Medical School, correct?
No, I went medical school. I went to Midwestern University. So that is the school is Chicago College of Osteopathic Medicine. And when I interviewed before Arizona College opened up, I interviewed like in '96 or something like that. And when I remember interviewing at the Chicago College, it was 80 below wind chill outside. Like it was so cold that my dad had to leave the car running during my interview. He went with me to the interview, stayed at the interview, waited there. And because I knew he was waiting for me out there, I left the interview a little early after the end. And they hadn't asked me where I wanted to go because they were opening up a brand new school in Arizona. So a month later after my interview, I get a phone call. They said, "Did you leave your interview early?" I'm like, oh, crap.
Folks, we are out of time for this segment of the Personal Safety Show. If you stay tuned in segment 2, you can find out what happened to Dr. Tangri and the medical school that he went to. Stay tuned. As always, if any listener has a question, a comment, something that they would like to see in a show upcoming, please reach out to us. The best way to contact us is to visit the website that houses our electronic business card, and that website is Firearm Mentor Card, CARD.com. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.